Memory is supposed to work in one direction. After you're born, your brain records everything along the way as you grow up. But what if one day you start remembering things from before you were even born? That's what happened to James Leininger, who was just 2 years old when he started having these violent nightmares about dying in a war. At first, it was easy to brush off, but then James started saying oddly detailed things no one should know, and every word he said turned out to be true. This is the story of James Leininger. It's one of the most compelling cases of reincarnation that still baffles scientists today, because what happened to him might make you question whether memory or identity are much more complicated than what we know right now. James Leininger was born in April of 1998 to his parents Bruce and Andrea. He was happy, healthy, and by all accounts, nothing out of the ordinary. But by the time James turned 2, something shifted. He started having these intense nightmares that would make him scream at the top of his lungs. He would thrash and flail like he was trying to escape something before jolting upright in bed, awake, crying, and just completely terrified. But before waking up, he'd always scream the same thing: airplane crash, plane on fire, little man can't get out. These nightmares left his parents confused. Like, for Bruce especially, he was like a practical, played by the rules kind of father. Why these night terrors were happening just made no sense. Then came these really bizarre drawings. Like, picture after picture, James would draw planes on fire and crashing, bullets flying. Sometimes the planes were labeled with these numbers or strange symbols. He signed all of his drawings the same way: James 3. Andrea thought maybe he saw something on TV, but the shows James watches don't even show aircraft on fire. And the details just kept coming, because one night at dinner, totally out of the blue, he said, "My airplane got shot in the engine and crashed. That's how I died." Bruce and Andrea just froze. How do you even respond to something like that? When they asked how his plane crashed, he says he flew a plane called the Corsair, and that since it had problems with its tires, it would veer to one side when landing. He even described the propellers, the landing gear, even the fuel tanks under the wings. His Corsair was stationed at a ship called the Natoma, and that he died after being shot down by the Japanese near a place called Iwo Jima. Now, understandably, Bruce and Andrea are speechless. Keep in mind, most 2-year-olds are just starting to form 2-word sentences, but James was speaking paragraphs and eerily calm. With a serious face, it was as if he was just telling the truth. And as if it couldn't get any weirder, James even recalled his best friend's name, Jack Larson. Remember that for later. Now, Bruce was Christian, so reincarnation just can't exist. So he did what any rational father would do and tried to prove his son wrong. He wrote down everything James said and cross-examined everything he could find online about World War II, from the US warships, from the Corsair plane. His goal was to rule out everything James said. But the more he searched, the worse it got, because everything James said matched something real. The Natoma, that was a real USS escort carrier that served in the Pacific Theater during World War II. The Corsair, well, that was a real fighter plane used in combat. And yes, it had a documented issue, a tendency to blow tires when landing, exactly what James had described. And the name Jack Larson, well, Bruce found out he was also a pilot who served aboard the USS Natoma. Before long, Bruce's casual research turned into a straight-up obsession. And every bizarre detail James dropped, Bruce dug through the archives and tried to fact-check it. And pretty soon, all the details from the Corsair to Jack Larson led to one pilot named James Huston Jr., or Huston for short. Everything just adds right up. Huston was a young Navy pilot who served aboard the USS Natoma Bay, who flew a Corsair. He died on March of 1945 after his plane was shot down in the engine, exactly how James described it. And near the island, you guessed it, Iwo Jima. So by all accounts, Huston was who Bruce's son James was in his previous life. To top it all off, remember how his son signed all of his drawings with James III? This pilot's legal name? James Huston III. At this point, Bruce was no longer trying to debunk anything. He knew the things that James mentioned aren't even widely published. Remember, this is the early 2000s, so Googling wasn't a thing. Yet despite that, his son James vividly recalled things like how Corsairs handled in battle, how the crash happened near a specific location off of the island of Iwo Jima, and even how Huston's plane crashed nose first into the ocean. And even if his son James found all of this from a book, a 2-year-old can't memorize anything close to that much. Later, Bruce would say he didn't want to believe in reincarnation, but so far, it was the closest thing to explain all of this. Bruce and Andrea are too deep to ignore what was happening, so they reach out to someone who might actually be able to help. Dr. Jim Tucker, a child psychiatrist who worked with the Division of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia. Now, I gotta say, this wasn't your average therapist. Dr. Tucker had spent years researching over 2,500 cases of children who claimed to remember past lives. After Dr. Tucker meets the Leingers, reviews Bruce's notes, and observes James's behavior, well, he concludes that James might be one of the most compelling cases he had ever seen. And Dr. Tucker didn't just take his parents' word for it. Bruce and Andrea actually took video of them questioning James. The footage was taken way before the family knew anything about Huston or the pilot. So Dr. Tucker watched these videos and confirmed there were no signs of leading questions or parental suggestion. He verified that the statements were made before any outside research was conducted or confirmed, like the plane being hit in the engine, the ship name Natoma, the pilot Jack Larson, all the details. And that's what really gave this case weight, because his father didn't just find a name and work backwards. It was James who spoke it first. Then Bruce looked. The puzzle pieces just started clicking together. To verify James's claims, Bruce and Andrea tracked down every person who knew Huston and was still alive. They were thinking if these people couldn't verify James's story, well, Bruce and Andrea would assume James could be pretending. But quite the opposite happened. It started with the veterans who served on the USS Natoma Bay. The veterans confirmed that James's claims were true. They remembered the mission near Iwo Jima, how Huston's plane even nosedived into the water. Also, remember Jack Larson, Huston's wingman? Well, Bruce discovered he was still alive, so they paid him a visit. And when Bruce asked Jack Larson about everything James claimed, he confirmed it all. He watched Huston's plane get shot down exactly as James had described. Now here is the craziest part for me. Huston had a surviving sister, Anne. So Bruce and Andrea went to meet her. But this time, they brought along James to meet her as well, just to see his reaction. And when James saw her, he ran to her, hugged her like she was family, and even called her Annie, which was a nickname no one else knew about. Annie was stunned. Like the whole time, James acted nothing like a 2-year-old and more like a long-lost friend. And after James shared more about the childhood memories, toys, even family pets, Anne just broke down. Because at this point, there's just no other explanation he could know, let alone remember all these inside memories if he wasn't Huston. Anne later left that interaction believing the same as Bruce. James was Huston. On June 5th, 2009, Bruce and Andrea published their book on this case, and safe to say, media outlets just blew up. As with any controversy, not everyone was convinced. In fact, plenty of people, scientists and skeptics, came forward to raise their skepticism. Some believed the entire story was the result of suggestive parenting, that Bruce, unintentionally or not, planted information into James's mind. After all, once Bruce started researching, it's possible he shared things, names, ships, photos, that James could have absorbed and repeated. Skeptics also pointed to the timeline, like Bruce didn't start documenting James's memories until after doing his own investigation, which makes it hard to say what came first, the memory or the search findings. Then there's the theory of cryptomnesia, which is the idea that James may have seen or heard something about World War II at a young age, but forgotten it consciously, but retained it deep inside of his memory. Maybe he overheard conversations, or maybe even a museum visit. It's rare, but it happens. And let's be honest, in America, war history is everywhere. Like, even if Bruce and Andrea were careful, James could have picked something up somewhere. A detail, a phrase, just enough to create a vivid imagination. But how many toddler drawings don't make sense until you really want them to? Because even the skeptics had to admit, there were things that James said that he shouldn't have known. Like the exact location of the crash site, the name of the pilot's friend, Jack Larson, that his plane was hit in the engine. Like, those weren't in children's books or cartoons or even in mainstream documentaries. Maybe James didn't learn those things. Like, maybe he remembered them. And for those in the scientific community open to reincarnation, James's case became a cornerstone thanks to Dr. Jim Tucker. It's important to note Bruce and Andrea never claimed their son's case proved reincarnation, but they were saying maybe it couldn't be explained any other way. Even those who doubted the supernatural side couldn't write it off entirely, because the emotional weight of James's memories, the specificity of his drawings, the grief he carried, they just felt real. And that's what makes this case so haunting. It's not just the data, it's not even the story, it's really the emotional truth behind a 2-year-old. Because whether or not James Leininger really lived before, one thing is certain: he believed he did. James eventually grew up and the nightmares faded, and the memories, if that's what they were, softened with time. Today he's a young adult. He still remembers some things, albeit blurrier now, but the story he left behind still leaves this burning question we're not really equipped to answer. What if death isn't the end? For Bruce and Andrea, it changed everything. Like, for Bruce, a hardcore Christian, he had to rethink everything he thought he knew about reincarnation. More than facts or theories, it's a 2-year-old carrying memories way too heavy for his age, and a family who had to look at the unknown and rethink about what they believed could be possible. Maybe you believe in reincarnation, maybe you don't, but if reincarnation is true, it's hard not to wonder, who was James before he was Huston? And who else may we have been life to life that we just can't remember? That's it for this episode. If you liked what you heard, leave a like and follow for more, because we post once, twice, or 3 times a week. What do you believe? Is James a reincarnated pilot or just an intuitive child? Until next time, stay curious, and I hope you have a horrible sleep. Shh.